My name is Greta Thunberg and I am from Sweden. If you see this video, we have been intercepted and kidnapped in international waters by the Israeli occupational forces or forces that support Israel.
Greta Thunberg, a name familiar to millions, boarded a yacht called the Madeleine along with 11 others. The plan sailed toward Gaza from Italy, deliver aid, raise awareness, challenge the blockade. On June 9, 2025, the journey was cut short. Intercepted by Israeli forces in the early morning hours, the Madeleine was taken to the port of Ashdod. The passengers, including French MEP Rima Hassan, were detained. No journalists were allowed on board. No live footage from the passengers, only images released by Israel. One showed Greta standing beside Israeli flags. Expression unreadable. The Israeli Foreign Ministry said it was a media stunt. They called the boat a selfie yacht. They claimed it carried less than a truckload of aid. But the story was never about the quantity of aid. It was about who was on board, why they were there, and what happened next. You're watching a story that many tried to downplay. This is the account of Greta Thunberg, Rima Hassan, and a group of peaceful activists detained at sea by the Israeli Defense Forces. And yes, the word used by Greta herself was kidnapped.
Towards Palestinians that Israel are committing by blocking and preventing humanitarian aid from entering Gaza. They did an illegal act by kidnapping us on international waters and against our will, bringing us to Israel, keeping us in the bottom of the boat, not letting us getting out and so on. But that is not the real story here. The real story is that there is a genocide going on in Gaza and a systematic starvation following the siege and blockade now, which is leading to food, medicine, water that are desperately needed to get into Gaza is prevented from doing so.
12 passengers. Some were environmental activists. Others were seasoned human rights workers. One of them, Rima Hassan, is a member of the European Parliament. They weren't sneaking across borders. They didn't hide their intentions. They publicized the mission. They sailed under visible flags. They carried humanitarian aid. Their vessel departed from Catania, Italy, on June 1st. The destination was Gaza. The goal was direct: to break the blockade, at least symbolically. The Madeleine was part of the Freedom Flotilla coalition. This wasn't their first attempt. In 2010, Israeli forces raided the Mavi Marmara in international waters. 10 activists died. That raid was condemned by several international bodies. This time, no one died, but the message was the same. Aid to Gaza must go through Israel, or not at all. And those who try otherwise, they get stopped, or worse, they get disappeared for hours with no contact to the outside world. At 5:30 local time, June 9th, the signal from the Madeleine went dark. 19 hours passed with no word. Activist networks scrambled to find them. Families reached out to consulate. Some feared the worst. When word finally arrived, it wasn't from the passengers. It was from the Israel's Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They announced the yacht had docked in Ashdod. They said the passengers were safe, undergoing medical checks. But the real details were hidden behind a wall of silence. The Freedom Flotilla coalition released a statement. It accused Israel of abduction. It demanded contact with the detained. Greta Thunberg, in a pre-recorded video, used one word: kidnapped. Can you call it anything else when a foreign military boards your boat, detains you, silences you, and transports you to a military port without your consent? What happened after they docked? According to Israeli outlets like N12 and Khan 11, 8 activists, including Rima Hassan, refused to sign deportation papers. Greta Thunberg signed. She was released. But those who refused, they were taken to Givon Detention Center in Ramla, Israel. According to Israeli law, so-called illegal residents who refuse voluntary deportation can be held up for 96 hours. Then, they can be deported by force. No trial, no appeal, no hearing. Just detention, then exile. Rima Hassan, a sitting member of the European Parliament, is now inside an Israeli prison. For what? Sailing with a bag of aid and standing against the blockade. Major outlets covered the story briefly. BBC posted a few updates. Reuters ran some photos, but most headlines focused on Greta. Not Rima, not Flotilla. not the blockade. Israel branded the voyage a PR stunt. They accused the group of seeking Instagram likes. That framing worked. Instead of a political crisis or breach of international norms, most people saw it as a quirky interruption in the news cycle. Just another day in Gaza coverage. But ask yourself, if these were Israeli citizens detained by Iran on a boat in international waters, would we call it a stunt? Would we downplay their silence for 19 hours? Would we ignore a sitting parliamentarian being imprisoned?
Greta Thunberg is, I quote, a young angry woman. She needs anger management sessions.
Well, I think the world needs a lot of more young angry women, to be honest, especially with everything going on right now.
Since October 2023, over 37,000 Palestinians have died in Gaza. Entire families erased, schools flattened, hospitals bombed. And the blockade continues. Even basic aid is limited. Trucks are stalled at crossings. Children die waiting for food or medicine. In Surah Al-Ma'idah 532, Allah says, "Whoever saves a life, it is as if he had saved all of mankind." That's what these activists believed. They weren't armed. They weren't political negotiators. They were people trying to help. But instead of support, they were treated as criminals. This raises a question. When aid becomes illegal, what kind of system are we defending? Greta Thunberg has long been criticized for speaking out on Palestine. She's been dropped by organizations, smeared by officials, attacked on social media, and now she has been detained. Released, but still detained. Still forced to sign her own expulsion. Still captured for sailing with medicine and hope. Her voice remains clear. Even after the voyage, she recorded a message. In it, she called the interception what it was: kidnapping. Do you agree? Or have we grown so numb that we no longer question state violence when it's carried out by allies? Surah Al-Hujurat 49:9 says, "And if two groups of believers fight, make peace between them. But if one of them oppresses the other, fight against the one that oppresses until it returns to Allah's command." Here, the command is resistance against injustice, but also a call to mediation. These activists weren't calling for war. They called for food delivery and got treated as threats. What does that tell us? When even peace is criminalized, only silence is accepted. Greta will go home. She'll hold press conferences. Her words will be covered. Some will listen, others will mock. Rima Hassan has now returned to France. After spending 3 days in Israeli detention, her flight landed at Roissy-Charles de Gaulle Airport on Thursday evening. She was held in solitary confinement near Ramla and began a hunger strike in protest. She had boarded the Madeleine as part of the Freedom Flotilla. 12 activists from France, Germany, Brazil, Turkey, Sweden, and the Netherlands. Their goal was humanitarian. Their reception was military. The other activists are still facing deportation without due process, and Gaza is still under blockade. The Freedom Flotilla says more boats are coming. They won't stop, and maybe next time you'll hear more than just a headline. What do you think should happen to people who bring medicine to starving children? Should they be arrested, detained, silenced, or should they be protected? Greta Thunberg and her crew made their choice. Not everyone agrees with them, but they acted with courage. They took a risk. Now ask yourself, if you were on that boat, would you sign the deportation papers? Or would you go to jail for what you believe is right? The Quran reminds us in Surah Ash-Shura 42:41, "Indeed, those who defend themselves after being wronged will not be held accountable." The world moves quickly, stories fade, but this one shouldn't. A Swedish activist, a French lawmaker, and 10 others detained while trying to help. The question is no longer whether they broke Israeli law. The question is, what law breaks us when it punishes compassion? Rima Hassan is no longer in a prison cell, but the fact that she ever was should matter. Her return to France doesn't erase the silence, the hunger strike, or the forced exile from Gaza's shore. And Gaza still awaits for aid. So next time someone tells you this was a stunt, ask them how silence helps the dying, and ask yourself, what will you do?